Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 174 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. So as you know, life is full of twists and turns. And along the way, we are going to encounter significant milestones and unexpected shifts that require us to adapt and adjust our financial lives. Whether it's something as simple as all this talk about student loans starting back up in the fall, which appears likely, or maybe getting married, maybe it's starting a family, maybe it's changing careers, could be sickness, or even a death in your family. These changes can have a profound impact on your financial life. And in this episode, we're going to share some of the life changes that we've encountered while getting out of debt, and some of us are still getting out of debt, and what's helping us navigate them, and how you can use some of the same methods to prepare for any of life's surprises. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast with Brad Nelson. Brad and his co-hosts experience the anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck before learning the fundamentals of financial security. They are now on a mission to empower regular people to pay off their debt for good and enjoy happier, less stressful lives. Keep listening for inspirational interviews, tips, tricks, and practical advice to gain financial freedom.
Hey, how is everyone doing today? You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad. And as always, welcome to today's show. Remember to get all the resources, show notes, and links for today's show. You can always head over to our website and find all of our episodes there as well, but you can head over to balancesense.com/174. That is BALANCEDCENTS.com/174. So, guys, life changes, and I want to just give a huge shout-out to Becky Brugge Brown. That's what my wife always called her. Becky reached out to me on Facebook earlier this week, and she's like, Brad, student loans are starting back up. I listen to your podcast all the time. And she said, I've had a lot of life changes going on. It would just be cool to have an episode just to talk about, what we're supposed to do. Like, how do you handle that? Like, I haven't paid student loans in quite a while. How do you get those back into your budget? And so I thought it would be a great time to talk about it because obviously, student loans starting back up. I think it's been, 3 years? Has it been 3 years since they kind of put the whole, pause on that? And I have a feeling it's going to cause a lot of pressure. It's going to cause a lot of pain for, I think, various reasons, and we can talk a little bit about that today. But I also thought it was pretty timely just, where some of us are at in our lives. Obviously, if you've been listening for the show for the last few months, obviously a lot of you know that my wife passed away. So I've been personally dealing with a lot of changes with my financial life. And I'll just be straight up and honest. It is a freaking mess. Like, my budget is not even close. I mean, it is rough right now. In fact, I just threw away a bunch of food in my refrigerator because it's like, I don't even know how to cook for one person and maybe sometimes just a 4-year-old child at a time because, my wife's not here anymore. So, there's just a lot of things that it takes time to adjust to. And so I think this is going to be a good episode. But what other life changes, just in general, have you guys gone through maybe I know, Katie, you're still going through this, but what life changes have you guys encountered along the way that have been kind of a big deal?
So for me, recently, going on almost a month now, I was given the unexpected pleasure of being job eliminated. So I know there's thousands of people. You see tons of people, posting social media, LinkedIn. It's pretty common right now. Things are just happening. I was not really anticipating it. And yeah, kind of caught me by surprise. So that has definitely been, kind of like a shock to the system, kind of having to get readjusted and like, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to talk about it today. I mean, the good side of it is we're not panicked. It's not, I'm not sitting here, oh my gosh, I have to have a job tomorrow because I can't pay my bills if we don't. And that's the saving grace out of all of it.
Yeah. He just came knocking on my door and said, "Can I come work for you?" Which, by the way, Ryan is now working for Debt Free Dad. How cool is that? Which, by the way, Ryan was not a believer in any of this, and now here he is. Look at that. How cool is that? I love it. But how long? Just so everyone's clear, how long were you working for that company?
22 years.
Okay. So just to give people an idea, I mean, that's a big change. That's a long time.
Yeah. Yep.
What about Amber, Chris, or Katie? What do you guys got?
I've moved across the country. I've changed jobs, medical stuff. There's been a few things. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say that, I mean, you're going nearly on 5 years. Would you say it's easier to adjust to some of those things now versus before you started, or even
For
before,
sure.
even before you started?
Yeah, I am in a much better place. I have emergency funds in case something like that happens, and that's been happening at my work as well. So it's like, oh, I thought I've been thinking about it and everything, but it's not like, oh no, what am I going to do?
Yeah, we've had, I mean, just not crazy big life events. I mean, we bought a house. That was a little bit of a different scenario for us, but we just some different family things. And when life kind of gets hectic and crazy and you think all is going well and I have a boring life, I promise you guys, I'm never going to say I have a boring life again. Because as soon as I put those words in the universe, all this stuff came dropping down on us. And I was like, oh crap. But we had savings. We did dip into emergency funds like the last year or so, but we haven't had to worry about money when all of those things came crashing down.
Yeah, life's fun like that, right?
Right?
Just when you think everything's, man, it can't get any better.
Yeah.
Bam.
I was like, I'm kind of bored. Don't say that.
Don't say that. Chris, how about
For
you?
me, yeah, I was going to say, for me, a lot of this stuff in marriage was well before we started this journey. Having kids was well before we started this journey. So for me, I think the big things were putting kids through college. Those are things that are changes in your budget that you have to make adjustments for. We moved a couple times, but I think the other big thing is just making the decision that we were going to move and I was going to change careers and start this ice cream business. And, it's been a lot of fun, but a lot of challenges along the way as well. But fortunately, like has been said, when you have an emergency fund, when you've got money in the bank, and I pay cash for everything in this business. So right now we have no debt on it, and we're able to operate it and, put capital in the business from day one to make sure that we can make it. It's a result of all the things that we did from 2005 to 2008 to make that decision that we weren't going to keep doing things the way we had always done them. So, I'm much further down the road. And so as I get older, I guess some of the life changes, they're going to start to appear again. And like Amber said, I don't wish for them. I don't want to say life's boring because you never know what life's going to throw at you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all, where we're at right now, I think we're all in a much better place to accept these life changes, even as hard as they can be. And I think that's the first point I want to kind of bring up today. I think if you're sitting here listening to this, I think the first point I want to make to you is stop waiting for the storms to come to take action. And I know that's, and I'm kind of being, I shouldn't even say kind of, I am being 100% a hypocrite when I say that, because it took a storm for me to seriously take action and to consider where my financial life was. It took that first marriage ending, losing my house to foreclosure. And that was a very scary situation for me. And I was working on my finances up until that point, but not at the level of seriousness that I started to after that had happened. So I think number one is just that's what I'm concerned about with these student loans kind of popping back up and starting to be repaid. I mean, we all knew that was going to happen at some point. Yes, it sounds like there's still going to be some forgiveness. Some of that's still being worked out, but it's not going to be nearly enough to, wipe out a lot of this for most people, And what my fear is, and what I know has happened, is that a lot of people probably took that money and didn't plan it, and now all of a sudden they got to figure out how to work that money back into their budget if they even have one. And that's going to be the scary part for a lot of people. I think it's going to be a rough go for people with student loans and readjusting and trying to get that cash flow back working to get those payments back in there. The other thing I would just want to make a point of before you guys respond to that is just getting in the habit of future pacing, is asking yourself, when we talk about like Ryan bringing up, losing his job, me my wife passed away. It's I think it's easy for a lot of people just to say, oh, that'll never happen to me. Or my daughter has special needs. When she was born, my wife had a completely healthy pregnancy, no signs of any problems whatsoever. But when she was born, she had a lot of challenges, a lot of issues, came with a lot of medical bills. And so I think it's easy to sit back and look at a lot of these different types of examples that are out in the world and just say, oh, that'll never happen to me. I think what also keeps a lot of people stuck too is that a lot of people are dealing with a lot of financial stress as it is. I think it's hard for them to think about all these other things that could happen, because a lot of the things that they're dealing with are stressful enough as it is. It's so overwhelming to even like, how do I think about all that stuff when I'm trying to deal with all the stuff that I'm dealing with right now? So I think there's a lot of stuff to unwind here when it comes to, handling these big life changes. And that's one of the reasons why I think, we focus so heavily on get started now, be intense, do it as fast as you can, because the further you can get caught up and kind of get ahead of the game, you can start to reasonably accept these life changes without it being so devastating to your financial life.
I would say to somebody out there listening, Brad, that you may think of yourself as a hypocrite. I hope the people who listen to this podcast are looking at you as somebody who's been there, done that, and somebody to learn from. Yeah, you waited till an emergency happened, and a lot of us sort of did. You wait till things are really bad, and then you finally are tired enough of being tired that you do something about it. But I hope the average listener out there doesn't think of you as a hypocrite, but rather thinks of you as somebody they can learn from. And if you'll have that mindset, you're going to be so much further ahead of the game. The other thing is life changes. It always changes. And instead of assuming that everything's always going to go perfect, and that's way a lot of adults, even teenagers, young people, you develop a plan, you expect it to execute exactly like you wrote it out or exactly like you thought it up. Everything's going to go perfect. And when it doesn't, all of a sudden you're faced with, a catastrophe. So I think the point is get started, learn from people who've done it, and understand that change is going to happen, and you have to be prepared for negative change. And if you will approach things from that mindset, it doesn't mean you have to be a pessimistic, doesn't mean you have to go through life always waiting for something to happen. It just means that when it happens, you're prepared for it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Like, nothing in my life since I was 20 years old has gone according to plan. So I'm not sure when that was supposed to happen.
Amen to that.
So I would have been, if I had not been doing this program, I would have been one of those people that took those nice little chunks of change that the government handed out throughout the pandemic, and I would have set my student loan payments aside and not thought about them, just like I did when when you're 6 months after you graduate, you're like, oh, I don't have to pay anything for 6 months on student loans. So didn't do any of that either. I avoided paying them as much as I possibly could, but I would have been one of those people that would now be scrambling to figure out, oh, how do I budget for that again when I was stretched thin? And I'm just really glad that I just kept paying them off, and now they're gone forever. And I never have to worry about them again because they'll never come back. I'm never going back to school. So I don't have to worry about that.
I love when you commented on that. When I posted, I said, hey, if anyone's got student loans, just wanted to kind of post this article. I had some really good information inside Roots just for, hey, here are some things that are coming up. And you commented, I'm so glad I don't have to ever worry about that anymore. Such a great win.
Because everyone's like, oh, they're going to pay it off. They're going to do this. I'm like, I'm not betting on that for that happening anytime soon. So I'm just going to take care of this myself.
Yeah. I think, it's going to kind of be a sports analogy. Chris, you'll appreciate this. But I think, when you're constantly living paycheck to paycheck and you're using these moments, these life-changing moments or these crisis type moments, all you're doing is just playing defense all the time. That's it. You're just constantly playing defense. And when you're always playing defensive, like, you can never be proactive and go on the offensive and actually score some points and get some wins in your financial life, because you're constantly just reacting to everything that's happening to you, rather than getting to the point where you finally get caught back up. You're finally making some headway on paying down your debt. You're building a savings. Now you can actually start to make some choices. I mean, look, Chris, you own your ice cream shop. You've been able to make a lot of choices because of the things you've done for years prior to you even getting to that point. And I think that's the kind of key point I want to drive home with anyone listening to this when it comes to these life changes or these big events that might happen to you, job loss, death, sickness, out of work for a while, whatever it is. I mean, you have to get to the point where you can start to be proactive, and you can't do that while the event is happening. You can get started, but you're already behind the game if the event has already happened, and now you're like, okay, well, now I gotta figure this out. It's like, well, no, you need to figure it out for the next one that's coming, because it's going to show up on your doorstep at some point.
But I find it, I mean, don't you find it hard? I mean, what I found hard when I started doing this is getting motivated in the times of where everything's going okay, right? Because it was always like, we never were like behind on our bills. We had some months where it was like really tight. We had like $30 left in the check account. Don't spend any money. We're going to really buckle down. And then we would get paid and would be like, yeah, we're fine. You know, we just won't spend, and we won't spend as much going out to eat next month. And then you kind of get back in your old ways. I mean, that's how I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is just until like, had I not, like right now happened to what happened to me, if I hadn't done what I did right now, I mean, it's been stressful the last 6 weeks as it is. I can't imagine throwing on top of like, we have $30 left in the checkbook and I just lost my job and I was making good money. And I mean, I would be working 100 hours a week right now because I wouldn't know what to do. I mean, and so I don't know. I think that is a challenge. I think that a lot of people struggle with, is like, in times of like, when everything's great, I'll worry about it when it happens. And then it's like, oh crap, deal with the crisis. And then once the crisis is over, we go back to our old ways of like, it's fine.
Right. Well, that's why they say comfortable is the most dangerous place you can be.
Yeah.
It really is, because of that reason. And, you know, it's like, if you smoked one cigarette and got cancer, no one would do that. But it's just it's the little things that, you know, it's the multiple cigarettes throughout the day for years and years that get you the cancer. It's the hamburger that doesn't cause the heart attack. It's all of the bad eating, all of that accumulation over the years. But yeah, comfortable is the most dangerous place to be.
Yep.
And I like the football Wild sports analogy, Brad, and I'll just throw 2 cents worth in here, at least the sport of football. There's times you got to take a step back and punt. Those are called special teams. It's not offense. It's not defense. It's just recognizing, okay, we're not going to get the first down here. Let's punt the ball and play defense for a little bit so that we can put ourselves back in a position to hopefully get the ball back and play offense. So yeah, you want to get to that point where you're always playing offense, or at least most of the time. But part of that's just recognizing that, hey, if things aren't going well, let's make a change. Let's do something different. But to the point of staying motivated, that's the hard part. If you don't feel like you're playing defense, or if it's not hard playing defense, then it's like, well, why bother? And then it's, you know, all of a sudden you're playing goal line defense and you're trying to not let the other team score. Then it becomes really important. So I think the point is, or at least what I hope the audience hears, is we all have experiences here. We've all been in your shoes where we waited to the last minute and we felt like, oh boy, things are really piling on. The only thing I could say to the motivation question is just learn from us. Give it a try, do something different. There's a great scene in Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise movie, and Robert Duvall, where he's trying to learn how to drive a stock car. And he keeps blowing his tires out before the end of the race. And Robert Duvall, his crew chief, says, all right, let's do this. You run like 30 laps your way. Let's run 30 laps my way and see who wins. And of course, he ends up with a better time running it his crew chief's way. And the moral of that story is, you know, doing something different in a different way could result in different outcomes. And I think the audience here, if you're struggling with that motivation question, just give it a try. Try something different. What do you have to lose? Give us 6 months. Do it the way we're suggesting. I promise you, after 6 months, you're going to find yourself in a lot better place. So just give it a try.
I've heard it said, you're always just one decision away from a completely different life. And it's true.
That's so true. It really is. Yeah, it really is. The other area I want to talk about is just how powerful a budget can be in situations like this, and the value of having a plan. And I think this is why most people are stressed out. You look at statistics over the last 6 to 8 months, over this past year, honestly, surveys of, what's causing the most stress in families, and, money and personal finance rank in the top 3, but right now it's number 1. And I think a big reason for that is just because of a lack of a plan, not even a get out of debt plan necessarily, but just having a clue as to what's going on with your financial life, what's coming in, what's going out, what's your spending looking like. When my wife passed away, there was no like freaking out about money or finances in that moment because of all the work that we had done leading up to it. It was just, it was a matter of just learning how to adjust, and I'm still learning how to do that. And it's probably going to take, honestly, a good year to really adjust. It really will. And sure, I'm going to probably spend more. I've already spent more in areas like going out to eat because it's just, my schedule is just so messed up right now. But that's okay. Like, I'm not sitting here beating myself up because money is not a problem for me. Yes, I'm not reaching some goals right now, but honestly, I don't even have any yet because my life has been turned upside down so much right now. It's like, so I'm just, you allow yourself to give yourself grace when you put in the work. And now when you're facing these situations, you don't have to be so worried about everything. And I gotta say, just like Ryan said, going through, losing his job and being the situation that he's in, I'm feeling the same way. I'm not spending days and hours and trying to figure out how I'm going to make money and how we're going to survive. And no, it's really concentrating on my kids and myself and getting ourselves back into life or whatever that's going to look like coming forward. And I got to tell you, it is the best work that you will ever do in your life. I can promise you. It is hard. It is hard. It is not fun. It is not sexy, but man, it is worth it. It is worth all the work you will put in. I promise you. All right, anybody got anything on that one? Is this a mic drop on that one?
No, I just giving somebody else an opportunity. But man, I think you pretty much said what needed to be said, and that is you've got a budget. You've got to build some of these potential major life changes, even if you don't know what they are. And that's the thing I used to teach my students is something is going to happen at some point in your life negative. A true emergency doesn't come right out and go, hey, an emergency is about to happen. Now, I've heard you talk about this many times. When your tire goes flat on your car because you haven't changed your tires in 50,000 miles, that should have been expected. That's not a true emergency, but most people treat it that way. And so what we're talking about here is those things that you truly don't expect. Breaking your ankle and now you can't work and you've got no income. Life's not going to tell you ahead of time, hey, you're going to break your ankle next week. But there's going to be something in your life that's going to happen at some point, more than once, that if you have money in the bank and it takes preparation, planning, and budgeting, you're going to be very much like your two shoes, where you've just had major life event changes, but you're not stressed over it. You never, either one of you never imagined that these two events would happen in your lives, but both of you learned and were smart enough to realize that at some point, something like this could happen. And you put yourself in a position where you're not sweating it. And I think that's the lesson for people to learn here is, the peace that you financially here, okay, the peace that you have because you put the time and the work into it. And that can be anybody out there if you get started and do the things we talk about.
Yeah. Well, even in coaching calls, I mean, just if you're listening to this, and if I listen to people when they're coaching calls, when they're stressed beyond belief, it is during one of these types of events that's caused it. And that is what breaks the back. And yes, it's like you say, Ryan, when we don't want to work on it because things are okay, but things really aren't okay. We just tell ourselves that they're okay, but they're really not okay because we are just one life event away from the back breaking. And that's what I find a lot of people are reaching out for help is at that moment where, oh my gosh, we had all of this happen and now we're, our finances are a mess. Well, it's like, well, the reality is your finances were already a mess. It took just this big weight just to break it all, right? It's like a house of cards and, it's just that slight breeze that just catches the one card and all of a sudden all of them are starting to fall down. Which brings me to the next point, which is the whole value of saving. So I want to talk about this and see what your viewpoints are. But obviously, creating a habit of saving is so important. We talk about the importance of emergency funds. I mentioned earlier, don't fall for this whole idea of, oh, that'll never happen to me, or none of these things are ever going to happen to me. I just want to read this quote real quick. It says, saving is a hedge against life's inevitable ability to surprise the hell out of you at the worst possible moments. Savings without a spending goal gives you options and flexibility, the ability to wait, the opportunity to pounce, and it gives you time to think. It lets you change course on your own terms. And this is from Morgan Housel and The Psychology of Money. Again, I think I mentioned this on the last episode. I mentioned this book a lot because I think it's great. If you haven't read it, I would go check it out. But I would say for me, like, I totally resonate with that quote. I mean, I think in all of the experiences, the two big events that I've experienced since being debt-free, I would say is when my daughter was born with the disabilities and the challenges that she had, and then obviously my wife passing away. I would say savings has saved us. You know, I forget what that quote is. Save money today so it'll save you tomorrow, I think is what it is, right? And that's how I feel. You know, I feel like it's not fun. Sure, I would like to buy other things or do other things, but man, it is like this big, giant hug that you get when you most need it from a financial standpoint. And it feels freaking great. And those people who get to that point, it's a pretty amazing feeling. As far as from a stress level, it's just, you know, it's just like a breath of fresh air. It's like so much weight is lifted off your shoulders when you got that savings.
Well, it's where you spend so much time and so much energy when you don't have it, right? Because that's where, I mean, again, going back to my situation, to think like we could lose the house, we could lose the cars, we could lose, like, I mean, that just would be so suffocating to have to deal with that sort of thing. And so I think that's the safe, like you said, just, it's a big hug. I'm not going to paint the picture that it's just like perfect and there's no worries at all. And we're not stressing.
Right.
I know my wife listens to our podcast. She's probably like, well, I'm a little stressed. So, but I mean, it's just, we're not stressed to that level. It's just, it's bigger picture. What I love about the quote is like, it changed course on your own terms. Just so much flexibility that you have when this happens, you know, you're not stuck. You know, you could be right now, like, you know, a big thing for us was putting ourselves in a position. So if something ever happened with our jobs, we could change course. We could do something different if we want to do, not just, I got to do what I do for the last 20 years because that's what I've done. And that's where I'm going to make the money. And that's where I have the experience. And that's where people get stuck. Like, I didn't want to have to do that.
I know.
But you're financially in a position, though, at least I'm guessing that this could turn out to be a great blessing. And you're in a position financially where you could sort of absorb that blow and, whoa, wait a minute. And then now you're forced to change direction, and it could turn out to be something good for you, all because financially you're in a position that you could make, or you're forced to make a change, but in a way that's going to turn out to be good for you. I think is what I'm trying to say.
That's right. Debt-free Dad's going to be a banger real soon.
Well, I'll say, Chris, over the course of my years of working, there were a number of opportunities along the way where there were opportunities that presented themselves. And the worst opportunities were the ones that you couldn't even consider because I had the bills to pay. Like things that were like, man, that's really interesting. I would really maybe like to do that. But you can't even entertain it. You couldn't even like sit down and have a conversation with someone about it, or really like, and that was the most disappointing over the years, is to look back and that was like the motivation for us to be like, we don't want to be in a position where an opportunity presents itself and we have to turn our back because we would rather, you know, spend money on stuff that I don't even remember what I spent money on.
I know. I didn't ever think that I would ever have a savings account. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are one paycheck away from disaster if an emergency came up. So when I started Roots, and it was like, okay, our first goal is get $1,000 in savings. I was like, well, no, that's not ever gonna happen. Like, and I think Brad, you had said like, what if your kid got sick or there was an emergency? I'm like, well, good thing I don't have kids, but
No emergencies for her.
no, but then my car died, like literally. So it's just like now I have a savings account where if something happened, I would be comfortable for at least a month or two and have some time and flexibility, not jump into panic mode immediately and stress out about it. Cause that literally just happened to some of my coworkers. And I'm like, oh, what if that had just happened to me? So yeah, it definitely makes you think a lot different when you are at this place. And yes, it's taken me 5 years to get here almost, but I am only 2 years away from debt free completely. And I was like, I would like to have those options when or if something would come along.
Yeah. Well, and I think the value of the savings in just the emergency fund is kind of like you guys have said, is that when those things happen, you don't have to stress right away. In fact, we've had a podcast episode it's a couple years ago now where we actually shared statistics and studies where it shows that people who are under constant financial stress, it's been proven that they will continue to make decisions that worsen their situation because of the stress. So like, for instance, Ryan, you had said, if you're in a situation where you had to work, I mean, you go out and you find all these jobs, you're working all this money, to pay all these bills. Well, now you've just taken all of your time off of the table to be able to focus on, hey, maybe there's something else I would rather do or something else, because now it's just constant one crisis to the next and that one stress to the next. So having the savings account gives you the opportunity just to take a step back and just relax. Let the emotion die down a little bit as much as you can, and then come back and be able to use your head a little bit better and make some better decisions. The last one I want to share, just if you're getting ready, as student loans are potentially, and it kind of looks like that they're going to start back up here in the fall of 2023, is right now is the time to start shopping your services, evaluating where you're spending your money. If you've listened to this podcast long enough, I think we mention it pretty much every episode. Go back and look at the last 3 to 6 months of your spending right now, even the last year since student loans haven't been around. Like where's your money been going? Get yourself on a budget. Make saving a priority. These are all proactive things that you can do. It's the summer months. Maybe pick up side hustles, side gigs, make some extra money, do some proactive money-making activities. I mean, these are all things that you can do to prepare. And that's why I like the timeliness of this episode, because, it's kind of looking like September. So you got a few months, but sadly what a lot of people do is they'll do nothing until it gets to the point where those bills are starting to show up again and it's like panic time. You don't have to do that. And then the last thing, like I said, I would just encourage you to be patient with yourself. And as I mentioned, my budget's all over the place right now. Nothing's been consistent outside of, regular expenses. Grocery bill's been up and down. Gas has been up and down. Going out to eat has been up and down. Like it is just messy. And that's okay. That's okay. When you're going through these transitions, that's the way it's going to be. But by working on this stuff and being proactive, the next life change that comes, you'll be in a much better position to accept those things. So the Totally Awesome Debt Freedom Planner is helping so many people make consistent progress with their finances. Whether that be building emergency funds, paying down bills, budgeting, tracking paydays, saving up for larger purchases, goal planning, and planning for those irregular yearly expenses that always seem to catch you by surprise. Now, the Debt Freedom Planner will help you take the stress out of managing your money. And if the thought is running through your mind, hey, I just need to have a simple tool to get my finances together, this planner is perfect for you. Head over to therealdebtfreedad.com, click on the Debt Freedom Planner in the menu at the top of the page, and order your Debt Freedom Planner today.
Let's talk about debt, baby. Let's talk about your money. Let's talk about all the good things, all the bad things that may be. Let's talk about debt. Let's talk about debt.
And that now means it's time for the celebrations of the show. First, we have Jennifer Orleman. Did my first budget this morning. Wow, scary stuff. The good news is I saw where my hard-earned money is going. Coffee and fast food. A lot of money. She says, now I know where to back off and what to pay attention to. Holy cow, mind is blown.
Yeah. Am I wrong? Isn't that the area that we see most?
It's crazy how much
Every time.
I was spending on fast food anyway.
Every time. Well, even last week's episode, we talked about fear of missing out. 47% of people who do fear of missing out or go into debt is for food. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Next one is Sarah Ann. Sarah says, I said no. We went to a street festival on Monday, and while we were there, I wanted to buy many things from vendors that were definitely a want and not a need. I acknowledged their work and that it was beautiful, but ultimately I walked away. You broke their hearts. That's okay, though. The one thing I did buy from one of the vendors was a gift for my niece, but that was in the budget. Sarah, that's an awesome behavior win. Good for you.
And Brenda Philhauer, she paid her car insurance in full for 6 months using cash.
Yeah, that was awesome. Sinking fund win, budgeting win. Great job, Brenda.
Amanda Lepak stayed on budget this month, was able to throw extra on credit cards from items she sold on Marketplace, and has money set aside for new deck boards and garden soil, all in cash.
Yeah, that's awesome. Way to go, Amanda.
And Jennifer Foster, I paid the residual interest on my credit cards, so they are finally all paid in full. Freedom from credit card debt feels amazing. I added $20 to my emergency fund.
Yeah, that is awesome. And if you haven't listened, Jennifer was on our podcast back in the fall of 2022. So if you want to go check that out, she's made amazing progress. She is so close to debt freedom outside of her mortgage. It's getting really exciting for her, and I'm excited for her as well. So congratulations to all you guys. And if you're getting out of debt, remember, it's just patience, consistency, and discipline. Keep listening to the podcast, but we're proud of all your work you're putting in. And if you're just getting started with our podcast, or maybe you've been listening for some time and you're ready to get started on the road to financial freedom, go visit our website at balancesense.com and sign up for our free Life Without Payments workshop, where I'm actually going to show you the first steps that have helped tens of thousands of people just like you and I kick financial stress and worry for good.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. Connect with us on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Brad Nelson Debt Free Dad. If you found value in today's episode, please leave a rating and review. We so appreciate it. For resources, show notes, and links mentioned in today's show, visit balancedsense.com. That's balancedsense.com. Catch you next week.